Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. From Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 15th chapter, text number 49. Viduropi parityajya prabhase dehamatmanah Krishna veshena tachittaha pitrabhisvakshayam yayo. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Vidura, while on pilgrimage, left his body at Prabhasa. Because he was absorbed in thought of Lord Krishna, he was received by the denizens of the Pitraloka planet, where he returned to his original post. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The difference between the Pandavas and Vidura is that the Pandavas are eternal associates of the Lord, the personality of Godhead, whereas Vidura is one of the administrative demigods in charge of the Pitraloka planet and is known as Yamaraja. Men are afraid of Yamaraja because it is he only who awards punishment to the miscreants of the material world. But those who are devotees of the Lord have nothing to fear from him. To the devotees he is a cordial friend, but to the non-devotees he is fear personified. As we have already discussed, it is understood that Yamaraja was cursed by Manduka Muni to be degraded as a Shudra, and therefore Vidura was an incarnation of Yamaraja. As an eternal servitor of the Lord, he displayed his devotional activities very ardently and lived a life of a pious man. So much so that a materialistic man like Dhritarashtra also got salvation by his instruction. So by his pious activities in the devotional service of the Lord, he was able to always remember the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus he became washed of all contamination of a Shudra born life. At the end he was again received by the denizens of Pitraloka and posted in his original position. The demigods are also associates of the Lord without personal touch, whereas the direct associates of the Lord are in constant personal touch with him. The Lord and his personal associates incarnate in many universes without cessation. The Lord remembers them all, whereas the associates forget due to their being very minute parts and parcels of the Lord. They are apt to forget such incidents due to being infinitesimal. This is corroborated in the Bhagavad-Gita 4.5. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Hare Krishna. We are in the chapter entitled The Pandavas Retire Timely. Isn't it? So this is a description of various aspects of pure devotees like Pandavas, who were very close associates, eternal associates in fact of Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. And after the Mahabharata war got concluded, so this is the continuation of that post Mahabharata war, what all events happened. So at the beginning of this chapter, it says that since Lord had gone back to Dwaraka after assisting Pandavas, making sure that Yudhishthira is enthroned as the emperor of the whole planet Earth, and the Pandavas were always waiting for Krishna's instructions. What are the next activities? So to be done under his guidance, Krishna. So now Krishna was there in Dwaraka. Pandavas wanted to hear from Krishna. It was quite some time. It was almost like 36 years. And then to find out more about Krishna, Yudhishthira Maharaj sends Arjuna to visit Dwaraka and ask about the next activities, the future course of action. And then we all know how by the will of providence, by the desire of the Supreme Lord, because his purpose had completed of visiting this earth, and he had to find some reason to go back to his eternal abode, Goloka Vrindavana. So he had devised a method wherein the Pandavas, the Yadu families, they fight among themselves, fratricidal war, and they kill each other, and finally Krishna and Balram both go back to their original abodes. And Arjuna, having seen this, having heard and having seen, and personally doing the final rites of all the Yadu members, Krishna, etc. He was so morose. He comes back, and then Yudhishthira actually asks him a lot of questions. Yudhishthira knew that this was happened because Narad Muni had already predicted this is going to happen. But still, as a pure devotee of the Lord, he didn't want to hear this episode of Lord Krishna's pastime. The Maushala Leela, it's called. So, but to make sure that this is not the case, he was asking Arjuna various questions. The reason for his moroseness. So he was asking what happened, you came across with someone whom you were not able to give protection, so various questions he puts. But finally Arjuna was not replying. He was very, his color was very pale, throat was choked, he was not able to talk. He comes to finally that this is the only reason why, because Arjuna is so sad, because Arjuna was very, very dear friend of Krishna. So Arjuna couldn't tolerate that separation from the Supreme Lord, and then finally he reveals that Krishna had wound up and he has already gone back to Godhead, and on the way, he couldn't even protect the queens of Lord Krishna. And then, some robbers, they kidnap them, they steal them and all that. Then finally we hear that Yudhishthira Maharaj and the 5 Pandava brothers, they also decide, since Lord is no more there in this material world, so what is the purpose of we living? So then they also decide to go back to home, back to Godhead. So in the previous verse we saw, so we'll read the translation. Thus by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attained the spiritual sky. The Pandavas attained the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the Supreme Narayana, Lord Krishna. This is attained only by those who meditate upon the one Supreme Lord without deviation. This abode of the Lord Sri Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavana, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in the material conception of life. But the Pandavas, being completely washed of all material contamination, attained that abode in their very same bodies. So they didn't had to quit their bodies also. They actually regained their original position, just like how Dhruva Maharaj, last class we listened, he actually went to the spiritual world in the same spiritual body. So in today's verse we are seeing Viduropi Parityajya Prabhase Deham Atmanaha Krishna Veshena Tachita Pitribi Swakshayam Yayo. So it is talking about Vidura today. This whole verse is explaining about how Vidura quit his body. So Vidura, while on a pilgrimage, left his body at a place called Prabhasa. Because he was absorbed in thought of Krishna, Krishna Veshena Tachitaha, he was received by the denizens of the Pitraloka planet, where he returned to his original post. Pitribi Swakshayam Yayo. Now Prabhupada very beautifully he explains elaborately in purport the history behind Vidura's appearance, isn't it? He was not like any other ordinary soul. Vidura's appearance in Mahabharata or Srimad Bhagavatam or in other Vedic scriptures, the descriptions are there, especially in Mahabharata, that he was a very, very special soul, special character. Who was Vidura? Anyone knows? Sorry, loudly? Yeah. So he was an incarnation of Lord of Dharma, Yamaraj himself. So who was the other incarnation of Lord Yamaraj in the same contemporary, in the same pastime, Mahabharata? Yudhishthira Maharaj, isn't it? So he is called Dharmaraj. So is it possible a person can incarnate simultaneously in more than one number? Yes, by the will of providence, by the will of Supreme Lord, if it is sanctioned by the Lord, he can a pure devotee, because Yamaraj is one of the 12 Mahajanas. Actually, by the empowerment of the Supreme Lord, any number of incarnations they can take. Just like Srila Prabhupada, we are saying, Prabhupada is there in deity form. Although he wound up his physical pastimes in the year 1977, he is actually still active. He reciprocates in his deity form. He reciprocates in his teachings. So it is possible because by the empowerment of the Supreme Lord. That is possible. So similarly, this Vidura, one of the incarnations Prabhupada mentions here, the difference between the Pandavas and Vidura is that the Pandavas are eternal associates of the Lord, the personality of Godhead, whereas Vidura is one of the administrative demigods in charge of the Pitraloka planet and is known as Yamaraja. Now there are different kinds of associates of the Supreme Lord. There could be some associates who are just part of some particular pastime. They are not always throughout the Supreme Lord. Like for example, today's case, Vidura. He comes for a specific role and he performs that and he winds up and he goes back to his original position. That's how he goes to the Pitraloka planet. Whereas some other devotees, like for example Pandavas, they are eternal associates of the Lord. Whenever Krishna incarnates in this material world, they also accompany the Supreme Lord. Just like we had a President of India visit last week. So whenever president comes, his personal entourage, his secretaries, for example, his family members, his official, security guards, his entourage of cars. There were some 100 plus cars, coming for one person. Entire city was cleaned. So this kind of arrangement was because when a king comes, so he comes with his entourage. He is not alone. So similarly, when Krishna comes, Krishna is the Bhoktaram Ejatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. So he is the master of not one small state or one country or one planet or one universe. Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, unlimited Brahmandas, he is the master. So when he comes, definitely he has his own set of selected people, the eternally liberated souls. They come and assist the Lord, they serve the Lord in performing his pastimes. So these are actually eternal associates like Yashoda Maya, Nanda Maharaj, the Gopas, Gopis and Pandavas, etc. Whereas Vidura, although he is one of the 12 Mahajanas, pure devotee of the Lord, his responsibility is to serve the Supreme Lord in a particular role as administrative head of punishing these sinful living entities. It's a very thankless task, isn't it? Police department in this material world, nobody likes them. Although there are some very good police, just by seeing their dress, people are getting scared. Nobody wants to interact with them, nobody wants to associate with them. They want to maintain a safe distance from them, isn't it? But there could be very sincere, nice people, very soft-hearted people. Law-abiding citizens need not fear them. Only person who breaks the law need to fear them. So similarly, Yamaraja, Prabhupada is explaining, for devotees, Yamaraja is not at all fearful because he is also pure devotee. What is his purpose? His role is serving the Supreme Lord. And what are devotees engaged in? Devotees are also engaged in serving the Supreme Lord by preaching, etc., doing various, rendering devotional services. So the Yamaraj and Yamadutas, the famous conversation in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, wherein Ajamila was given second chance. Post Ajamila was given that first chance. There is a very nice elaborate discussion that happens between Yamadutas and Yamaraja. There he clearly mentions that you should never disturb devotees who are engaged in rendering devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So then who are the targets of Yamadutas or Yamaraj? People who are non-devotees, who are sinful, who are not rendering any devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So they are the actually targets. So this Pitruloka, it is said in various scriptures like Garuda Purana, or sometimes it is said that the living entity who is very, very sinful is taken to the abode of Yamaraj, where the master is Yamaraja, and then in the interim stage, in the interim period, because the gross body is not there, the jiva is left already in the gross body, and when the soul is taking the subtle body comprising of mind, intelligence and false ego, Sukshma Sarira and Yatana Sarira, a special body is given where the soul doesn't die. It has to go through a long phase of period because it's ultimately experience. Soul, even in material world, there are different living entities which experience different time scales. Urdhvan gachanti sattvastha, madhye tishtanti rajasa, jaganna guna vratyastha, adho gachanti tamasa. There are middle planetary systems like Earth, lower planetary systems, the hellish planets, and the upper planetary systems, where the demigods, the pious living entities reside. So now, although this Pitru Loka planet, it's one of the upper planetary systems, so the in charge is Yamaraja. How is it? How are the sinful persons taken to the upper planetary system? So there is a description in the Vedic scriptures in Mahabharata and other Puranas, etc., Garuda Purana, etc. So there it's mentioned that this Pitruloka, that is why overseen by Yamaraja, it is the place after the living entity suffers his destined punishment, which is again there in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the descriptions of different hellish planets and all that. After that, whatever pious credit, little pious credit the living entity had accumulated during the lifetimes in this material world, so for that it will get positive results. Whatever sinful activity we do, we get separate result. Whatever pious activities we do, we get separate results for that. Both are not nullified ideally. Only devotional service will nullify completely sinful activities as well as pious activities, so that we transcend completely the material modes and we don't have to come back to this material world. But otherwise, sinful entities which have done some pious activities and some impious activities, they suffer, go through hellish planetary experience. for many, many thousands of years, because that the time scale is different as you go upwards. In the one night of the residents of moon planet is equal to 6 months here, and then same again, one day is another 6 months. So it's like 1 year and 1 day, their comparison. So like that they go on for so many years of suffering, and then finally they have to be given a suitable body, next material body. So in that interim stage, it is said that they will be residing in Pitruloka. So that is called as actually Pitruloka. So Krishna also gives reference in Bhagavad-Gita, isn't it? Yanti deva vrata devan pitrin yanti pitravrataha bhutani yanti bhutejo madhyajano api yanti mam. So Krishna has given us free will. Wherever we wish to go, we can go there. If you want to go to Pitruloka, we can go there. If you want to go to the moon planet, sun planet, we can go. And if you want to go back to Godhead, Goloka Vrindavana or one of the Vaikuntha planets, we can do that also by using free will. Krishna has given that freedom. So Prabhupada very nicely explains, just like to go from one country to another country in this material world, we need passport, visa, there are so many formalities. By force, nobody can enter another country, isn't it? They'll be thrown out or, jailed. So similarly, just in this planet, if so much of procedure is there, you need so much of permission, clearances to enter some other territory, some other country. Do you think people can go to different planets without the permission, without the necessary qualification? Although modern scientists claim so many things today, because they are not able to get the permission from the residents of that particular planet, they are in a completely different dimension. They come empty-handed. Prabhupada says they go to moon, bring some sand, some stone, some mud they bring, and they say there are no living entities. But Shastras say Sarvaga, the living entities are everywhere. Somebody may say this room is filled with only human beings. That is a very unintelligent statement. There are so many microbes here, there are so many other living entities. In the corner of the room there are some entities. Just because we are not able to see, we cannot conclude there are no living entities. So this Pitruloka is such, although it's a higher planet, so it's a place where people wait, and it is called, in today's verse also it is here, Pitribhi Swakshayam Yayo. There are so many residents of Pitruloka. And what are the roles and duties of these residents of Pitruloka? They are actually waiting for their descendants who are part of this material planetary systems. The material planetary systems means it's not just one earthly planet. So it is in the middle planetary system. If you read the Srimad Bhagavatam 5th canto, there are multiple higher planets, there are multiple middle planets and multiple lower planetary systems. So the universe is so vast. So the living entities in this life may be present in this particular planet. Next life he may go to some other universe or some other planet of the same universe. So the Pitrus, our ancestors, they are actually waiting. Waiting for what? Waiting for some pious credits to be given to them. That is why every year, that is why Pitru Paksha, even today the cultured families, people from different Brahminical culture and all that, who follow Vedic scriptures, they follow once in a year, they remember their ancestors, and on that particular tithi, particular date on which the soul had passed away, they offer some Vishnu Prasadam, Krishna's Prasadam, Vishnu Prasadam. So by doing that, actually what happens, they can prolong their stay in Pitruloka, because it's one of the higher planetary system. If it was a suffering planet, nobody would want to prolong their stay in that planet, because it's a higher planetary system. They are higher living entities, they get association there, hence they are able to prolong their stay if their descendants offer. Now if descendants don't offer anything, then immediately the pious credit, whatever suffering is there, that is going to begin for that particular jiva. So it is said that everybody should follow these Vedic scriptures injunctions, so that they will do some service to their ancestors. Otherwise what happens, the ancestors curse the descendants, and then descendants will be in problem. So that is why this Karma Kandiya portion of the section of the Vedas is so complicated. You don't know how many ancestors you had in this body, right? For how many ancestors you can offer. Like for example, today you are celebrating Father's Day. So then previous life somebody else was a father. Previous to that somebody else was a father. So like that, if you go on counting, there is no limit that you cannot trace out. Anadi Kale. So that Anadi Karma Phale Padi Bhavarnava Jale. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, great Acharya, We cannot trace how many parents we had, how many fathers, how many mothers we had. So if you are not offering oblations to all those people, all the ancestors, your grandfather, grandparents, great-grandparents, then everybody is going to curse the descendants, because you are pushing them to hellish region. So that is why only solution for relieving everybody, every sinful entity that is stuck in this material world is to become a pure devotee of the Lord. Yatha taror moola nishechanena trupyanti tat skanda bhujopashaka. It's not possible to water each and every branch, leaf, twig of the tree, but just by watering the root of the tree, the entire tree is taken care, entire thing is nourished. Just like by feeding food to our stomach through the mouth, the entire body is getting nourished. So Prabhupada is mentioning that so that Yudhishthira Maharaj, because he had descended, and then why did he descend? Prabhupada also mentions that as we have already discussed, it is understood that Yamaraj was cursed by Mandakya Mani to be degraded as a Shudra, and therefore Vidura was an incarnation of Yamaraj. So this story of cursing is also very interesting, which Prabhupada himself narrates in some other purport. In this he is not explained. Once there was a sage called Mandukya Muni. So this Mandukya Muni or Mandavya Muni, so he was performing tapasya in his hermitage in a place somewhere in North India. And then when he was performing his tapasya, he was very elevated sage. Now for example, we come across different sages, different characters in Srimad Bhagavatam, Mahabharata. So it's ultimately the soul's spiritual journey towards perfection. Suppose there is one category of people, suppose there is a scale, there is a ruler. So the two ends, the one of the ends is the atheists. Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita, the four categories of people who never surrender to Krishna. Namam dushkrutino muda prabhadyante naradhama maya aparita jnana asurim bhavamachita. So asuras, the atheists, the foolish, the people whose knowledge is taken away by, intelligence is taken away by Maya, all these four kinds of people never surrender to Krishna. So if we keep all those people in one end of the ruler, and on the other side, it is pure devotees, Nitya Siddhas, like Srila Prabhupada. Now in between there are so many living entities, so many gradations, so many jivas. We all fall into one of these places, locations. There are innumerable, it's somebody may be 50% pure devotee, somebody may be 70% pure devotee, somebody may be 40% pure devotee. So it's ultimately soul's journey, life after life. The body gets demolished, but the soul continues to exist, takes on new bodies, and it's a spiritual journey until that perfection is reached. So now this sage Mandavya has references in different Purana scriptures. It's a very special soul. And so what happens is he was performing very severe penances in his ashram. And one day what happened, some thieves, some robbers come and they steal a lot of treasury from the treasure house of the king itself, and then they run away from that place. And while going through the forest, they come into the sage's ashrama. And then they realize that this sage is performing severe austerity penance. He is unaware of what's happening outside this world. And then they decide that better, because they were carrying booty, loads and loads of booties. So they think that better to live in ashram and let us hide for night, and then next morning we will go back. And when the soldiers, following these robbers, they reach the same ashram, Mandavya Muni's ashram. So they ask about these robbers. They question this sage, but the sage was in deep trance, deep meditation. He didn't respond them. So the soldiers understand, this sage is in deep meditation. So they go into his ashram. They start searching for these stolen items, and they come across this. They find out that it is so many things. Whatever was missing from king's place, treasure house, was all found in this sage's ashram. And then they further continue their search, and they catch hold of these thieves also. And moment they catch hold of all these things, they come back. Now they started thinking this sage is acting as though he is not aware what is happening outside. They question him, and they forcefully imprison him also and take to the king. Because king was not aware of exactly what had happened. Ultimately, king is a decision maker. Although he is the administrative head, All his decisions are not 100% perfect. So what happens? He thinks that he is also one of the thief, and he punishes. And what was the punishment? The punishment was, all these people have to be pierced through the lance, and then they all have to be killed. And how was that? The lance had to be pierced from the rectum, and they were made the arrangement, because the punishment was so severe in olden days. That is why thievery, all this robbery was very, very almost negligible. Nobody would dare, because if they are caught, it is sure that they will all be killed. So the punishments were made, because today in Kali Yuga, no governments, they are so qualified, or the human civilization itself is degrading every day as Kali Yuga is progressing. That is the nature of this Kali Yuga. So all these things have come down. So, but otherwise, they were supposed to sit on the sharpened edge of that lance, and then that's how the thing was supposed to be pierced, and then it will come out of the skull. That was the punishment. And then everybody, all the thieves along with this sage Mandavya Muni, were taken to this place where this punishment was given, and then they were raised on a platform, and then they were kept like that. So then what happens? All the other thieves, they die. And the administrative, the people, the king's servants, they go away, that let us come back after 1 week and see what happens. So they go away, and when they come back after 1 week, all these regular thieves, they all are killed actually, they all died. But this Mandavya Muni was sitting as it is, because of his tapashakti. 1 week, no eating, no food, nothing, no sleeping, just as it is, he was placed, he was sitting, the lance couldn't pierce him. And then they also, some other jailers, they informed that some birds are coming, some animals are coming, they're talking with this sage. So actually, they were the associates of this sage. He were somehow, managed to communicate with them, and he was very sad that he was being punished for none of his fault. And then they go and report to the local king. And when this king hears about this, he realizes he made a great mistake. This sage was not at all a culprit. Unnecessarily he was punished. And then when the king comes running, begging for his forgiveness, pardon from the sage agrees that whatever suffering one is going through, or whatever happiness one is going through, the soul itself is the cause. So nobody else is the cause. So why do you blame yourself, king? So I excuse you. And then the sage was released. And moment sage was released, see the power of his tapashakti, austerity, he goes to the abode of Yamaraj. So he questions Yamaraj. So that means he is not an ordinary soul. Nobody can go just like that in the same body to Yamaloka or heaven. Even Durvasa Muni went to all Vaikuntha Loka also. That was because Lord had permitted that particular soul for a particular cause, for a particular reason, to give a very strong message and instructions for the general populace to follow. So when then he goes and meets Yamaraj, that he questions him, why did he punish him? So then the Yamaraj replies that when the sage was a small child of maybe 5-6 years old, so he had pierced one ant, and then here the ant had died like that. So the same punishment had to be given to him also. So then after hearing this, the sage becomes enraged. Just because even in today's law, whatever law we see, Manu Samhita or different laws, that are all derived basically from the original Vedic literatures. So it is said that Mandavya Muni says up to 12 years of age, children are not punished, because they don't have still proper knowledge, they don't know what is right, what is wrong, so they are not punished. So but because although I was a small child, I did something in my ignorance, you are punishing that kind of an extreme disproportionate punishment, you deserve to be called as a Shudra. Shudra means without any intelligence or less intelligent. So I curse you, counter curse, that you should go back to the material world and become a son of a Shudrani. And then you have to be there for a few years, and after that you will be again reinstated. So that was the background. And Prabhupada is mentioning that once this particular pastime was complete, Vidura goes back again to the Pitraloka as an administrative head. Prabhupada is telling, as an eternal servitor of the Lord, he displayed his devotional activities very ardently and lived a life of a pious man, so much so that a materialistic man like Dhritarashtra also got salvation by his instruction. So this Mandavya Muni's curse was so important that he could curse even Yamaraja For what purpose? For a special purpose. To send one pure devotee to this material world so that many other souls are getting liberated. And then it further goes that Mandava Muni comes back, and then if you read the history of Mandavya Muni, he travels, because sages, they keep traveling, they don't have fixed locations, they keep traveling. Only in Chaturmasya they stay in one particular place, and they keep on going on a pilgrimage, they distribute this knowledge. And that same Mandavya Muni, he comes to South India, and we have heard of Mandavya Muni any time before, right? Somewhere we have heard. So he comes to the precincts of Bangalore there, where we have today Vaikunta Hill Temple, Vasantapura. And then because these sages, just like we will be in fluctuations every day, right? Sometimes we'll be mode of goodness, sometimes we are in the mode of Rajoguna, sometimes we are in the mode of Tamaguna. And we do activities limited to our, suppose Rajoguna, we may eat one extra sweet, sometimes we may go on extra preaching, something, this kind of level we do. Something mode of goodness, we do extra chanting, extra reading. Shuddha Sattva will be completely in different, dimension. So we do according to our skill. But these sages, when they are in different modes, fluctuation. So looks like when the sage was in very nice Shuddha Sattva Guna or even Sattva Guna, he starts meditating to have vision of the Lord, Supreme Lord. And then Lord becomes pleased with him and he appears. And then that's how we have that Vasanta Vallabharaya temple. And because of the blessings of the Supreme Lord, today we have Rajadiraja Govinda, Govinda. So like that, there are different souls playing their part, rendering different services to the Supreme Lord in different capacities. So it's not that, Prabhupada also mentions this in Varnasrama system. So how important is Varnasrama system for a society to function normally? Because as an entire body, if you see, head is required, arms are required, legs are required, belly is required. Everybody have their prescribed duties to be performed. So that is why Prabhupada set up ISKCON institution, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, wherein the same principles of the Vedic scriptures, Varnashrama system is being followed. But that is Daivi Varnashrama Dharma, transcendental Varnashrama system. Externally it may look like somebody is doing Brahmanical job, somebody is doing Kshatriya's job, somebody is doing Vaishya's job, somebody is doing Shudra's job. But actually, in the eyes of the Lord, in the institution, that is actually beyond these four categories, ashramas. Somebody has to sit here, somebody has to sit there, somebody has to sit somewhere else. But definitely here, some special soul only can sit. That is Srila Prabhupada. So like that, different locations are there, different services are there. That doesn't mean that somebody is small or big. It requires proper Shastra Chakshu vision to understand the overall bigger plan, picture of the Lord, wherein every soul has got their responsibility and duties to render to their best capability. So Prabhupada is mentioning here, Vidura got cursed, he became the son of the maid servant. Again, there is a long history how Vidura appeared also. And then he is the brother of Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Pandu dies at an early age, and Dhritarashtra was blind, but Vidura was so qualified. Actually he was supposed to be enthroned, but just because he was the son of a maid servant, Shudrani, he couldn't claim for that royal thing. But nevertheless he understood each and every Shastra, because he is actually Dharmaraja, he knew all the scriptures, and he becomes very qualified in archery and other things, and he becomes the prime minister, the prime advisor for the king Dhritarashtra. And apart from that, the devotional aspect, the devotional side is, if you go through Mahabharata, very beautifully Prabhupada is explaining. So here, by his pious activities in the devotional service of the Lord, he was able to always remember the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus he became washed of all contamination of a Shudra born life. So birth is not a disqualification for advancing in spiritual life. So that is why it is called Ahituki Apratihata Yatma Suprasidati. The process of Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, doesn't require any pre-qualification. Birth, education, beauty, etc. How rich is one, how poor is one, doesn't require any. But definitely, after coming in touch with Krishna consciousness, if we are unable to make progress, if you are not able to utilize this benefit given to us by Prabhupada and Prabhupada's institution, then definitely we are to be blamed. So Vidura was so expert that he would guide Yudhishthira on various aspects of administration. And it is also said that when at the time when Dhritarashtra was completely devastated, because he knew this war was about to begin, Mahabharata war, and Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra's elder son Duryodhana, and his 99 remaining sons, they were all completely adamant and they were not willing to compromise with the Pandavas. And when that happens, there is a beautiful set of instructions where Vidura Niti it's called. There are over 40 chapters with which is part of Mahabharata, where Vidura gives very beautiful set of instructions. Few of that is, one of the instructions which Vidura gives is ego destroys everything, whereas he is referring to the ego, the false ego, whereas the real ego which saves the living entity is the one which one has to cultivate. The real ego is what? Because he is a pure devotee, he knows Bhagavata Dharma. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, what did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say? Jeever Swarupa hai Nitya Krishna Das. So the constitutional position of every living entity, every living soul, irrespective of its position, is to be the servant of the Supreme Lord, to serve the Supreme Lord, to engage in loving devotional service to the Lord. So this real ego is what actually saves. And it is also said that Vidura had helped Pandavas when that house of Shalak was built, and Duryodhana and team, they were planning to send Pandavas there, and they thought they will burn that house so that they can kill them. So the warning also was given by Vidura only, to say Pandavas. So they had a secret tunnel through which they had escaped. And then other pastimes, like when Udura, once very interesting pastime, when Krishna visits as a peace messenger, he comes to Hastinapur, and he was actually supposed to meet Emperor Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, and ask for a compromise wherein this Mahabharata war could be avoided. So when he comes there, Duryodhana knows Krishna is very cunning, so it is actually better to have him also on his side. So he tries to please him by offering the best accommodation, best facilities, and Krishna knew that Duryodhana is going to come up with this. But Krishna also knew that Duryodhana will have some plans if he stays there. So he tells that I don't want to stay in your palace, I want to stay in Vidura's house. And Vidura actually he marries one lady called Sulabha. Again, she also has a history. She is also actually a very great devotee of the Supreme Lord. And then when Krishna was staying in Vidura's house, the Supreme Lord was served very nicely by Vidura and his wife. And then there is a pastime wherein Vidura's wife is actually peeling the banana and feeding the Supreme Lord the peel, not the banana, because she was so astonished that Krishna is the king of Dwarka, he is leaving all those facilities and he has agreed to come and stay with us. So she was so happy. And then Krishna also is Bhavagrahi Janardana, only with love and devotion. Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati. So he only accepts what is offered to him with love and devotion. It need not be very costly items, it need not be very valuable items. He is what does he want? What can anyone offer to him? So only when he sees devotees, that love and devotion, that is what he is going to accept. So so this was about Vidura's few things, and then it is very amazing to learn and study the life of pure devotees like Vidura. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita also, how we see a lot of devotees, they always, what do they practice? They practice the art of dying. So in today's verse also it is said how Vidura, while on a pilgrimage, left his body at Prabhasa because he was absorbed in the thought of Krishna. He was received by the denizens, so and so. So the main point is absorbing ourselves in the consciousness of Krishna. So that is why Prabhupada said it as Krishna consciousness. In our consciousness, Krishna should be there. Krishna's pastimes should be there. Or chanting Krishna's holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Krishna Matihi, if Krishna is always there in our consciousness, then it is very, very easy to spiritually progress in spiritual life. And at the end, so that is the Ante Narayana Smriti, Janma Labha Parapumsam, Ante Labha Smriti. So basically the ultimate goal of having this human form is to go back to Godhead. That happens when at the time of death we are able to remember Krishna. So in today's verse, Prabhupada is also mentioning the demigods are also associates of the Lord without personal touch, whereas the direct associates of the Lord are in constant personal touch with Him. The Lord and His personal associates incarnate in many universes without cessation. The Lord remembers all these appearances, whereas the associates forget due to their being very minute parts and parcels of the Lord. They are apt to forget such incidents due to being infinitesimal. This is corroborated in the Bhagavad-Gita 4.5. So 4.5, what does it say? The Transcendental Knowledge chapter, it says, so Lord is saying, Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, Bahuni, you can repeat after me, Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, Bahuni me Vyatitani, Janmani Tavacharjuna, Tanyaham Veda Sarvani, Natvam Veta Parantapa. So Arjuna's position also was like that. So Arjuna tells that how it's that you have instructed this knowledge to Sun God, who is millions of years before, and how you the same person who are with me today as a contemporary. So Arjuna also puts the same question, because Arjuna being a jiva, although he is a eternal servitor of the Lord, eternal friend of Krishna, he is actually forgetting because he is a jiva tattva. Whereas Krishna is telling, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of enemy. So that's exactly Prabhupada is quoting that Vidura must have forgotten what was he previously, but when in the discussion between Maitreya and Vidura, that discussion in Srimad Bhagavatam, further we will see in 3rd and 4th cantos, various topics they discuss. What is the best achievement for a human form of life? What is that the best thing he can get out of human form? So all these things they discuss. Prithu Maharaj's pastime they discuss, and Dhruva Maharaj's pastime come in that, Puranjana's pastime come in that. So Maitreya Rishi, being the contemporary of Veda Vyasa, he actually reminds Vidura, you were in your previous life Yamaraj. That is why you are continuing to be a pure devotee. Yamaraj originally is a Mahabhagavata pure devotee. So Vidura also, although he was cursed by Mandavya Muni, he actually is playing that part, this role, just like Bhishma, different devotees of the Lord were playing for a bigger plan. So it's actually art of dying. It's in another place, the 8th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, entitled Attaining the Supreme. So Krishna mentions there also, Antakalecha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yah prayati tamad bhavam nasti atyatra samshaya. So it is said that our aim is to become amritatva, to get that immortality. So because punarapi jananam punarapi maranam, we take birth, whoever takes birth have to die, and after taking after dying again one has to take birth. So this only way to escape this janma mrityu jara vyadhi cycle is to go back to Godhead. That happens only when we become devotees in this life. So that is why it is said that Yudhishthira Maharaj also is glorifying Vidura. He is saying when Vidura was about to, he didn't want to take part in Mahabharata war. So just like Balram went on a pilgrimage, he also didn't want to take part in the war. Vidura also, when he was about to go, he said, Vidura, no, I want to go to pilgrimage, because Duryodhana had insulted him. And there are references, in fact, if Duryodhana would have insulted Vidura, if Vidura was on the team, because he was a master strategist, so there were chances of winning the war. But of course, Krishna's will was there. So there, Yudhishthira Maharaj also glorifies Vidura, saying that Tirthi kurvanti tirthani swantastena gadabrata, because pure devotees of the Lord, they are carrying Lord Krishna always in their hearts. They don't have to go to pilgrimage externally. They themselves are the places of pilgrimage. They create, wherever they go, the places of pilgrimage are created. So that is another thing. And then Bhaktivedanta Thakur also actually very nicely explains. There is a poem in Kalyana Kalpataru, song number 12 in Upadesha. Manare Dhana Mada Nitanta Asar. The official name of this song is Upadesha. There Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that, he was popularly known as 7th Goswami, the father of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because he had written so many literatures for the benefit of humanity. There he says that when there is life, there is death. O my dear mind, you are greatly intoxicated by your wealth and possessions and talents, but just let me tell you that this is completely useless. When this body is gone, your wealth, followers, property, as well as everything else that depends on this body will be good for nothing at all. No amount of wealth can buy death. This is the rule of Govinda Hare. Hence, instead of misusing your accumulated wealth, use it for the right purpose, which is for the benefit of your soul, and engage in the service of Krishna, Supreme Lord Radha Krishna and their devotees. So this is the right way of utilizing whatever gifts we have received from the Supreme Lord, which ultimately all be useful for this particular art of dying. So Srila Prabhupada also he captured this mood of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Viduras, and all the predecessor acharyas. He presented us with ISKCON. There is a very interesting pastime where Prabhupada was explaining about how Bharat Maharaj gets attached to a deer. Although he was the emperor of the world, he had everything at his disposal, still he quit and he was get out of that attachment. But when he goes to forest, by the will of providence, he gets, just to show mercy to a deer, he gets attached, and then he becomes the deer. At the time of death, he thinks of deer, and then he gets the body of the deer in the next life. So, but the memory is retained. So that way Krishna says, Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashati. Whatever spiritual credits we accumulate, everybody has got bank balance in it. Similarly, a sadhaka's bank balance, a pure devotee's bank balance is what? Which cannot be stolen by anybody, is the sadhana. The how many times Hare Krishna mantra one has chanted, what all spiritual activities, devotional service he has rendered for Krishna. So that will be carried from life after life. So then Bharat Maharaj was blessed with that memory. Next life he becomes Jada Bharata, and then he goes back to God. So similarly, Bhishma Deva was also preparing art of dying. He was actually Ichcha Mrityu boon he had. So only when he desires death, he will be killed. Otherwise, he will continue to live on. So he chose that particular right moment, right time when Krishna was present in front of his vision. Then he quit his body. So similarly, Ajamila also, then he perfected his life. So there is a very interesting pastime recollected by one devotee. Prabhupada says that there was a devotee in ISKCON whose name was Kartikeya. And his mother, she was sick, and then this devotee had gone to see her in the hospital. And then she was not supporting very much, but somewhere she had this feeling that mother, my son had joined ISKCON. So then when she was inquiring, now where is your Krishna? She asks, and at that moment she actually dies. So Prabhupada says, so at the time of death, her consciousness was, she asked, her last words were, where is your Krishna? So you chant Hare Krishna or in the association of devotee. So at the time of death, so Prabhupada says, she went back to home, back to Godhead. So that is the potency of Prabhupada's institution, mercy. And then Prabhupada himself showed in his pastime also towards the end of his physical disappearance. So Prabhupada was completely detached. He was not afraid of death at all. Because death, Prabhupada said that popularly, it is like every day we are sleeping for a few hours. Death is like sleeping for few more hours. And based on our activities in this present life, we are going to get either promoted or demoted in the next life. So a quick summary is, we saw what is about Pitraloka, how Prabhupada actually mentions in the purport why Vidura was cursed by that particular sage Mandukya Muni, and we learnt about Mandukya Muni's Mandavya or Mandukya Muni, who has written Mandavya Upanishad. So we learnt of his pastime, and then history of Vidura. And history of Vidura, you can go on speaking for days and days. There's so much. We selected few points, and then ultimately Prabhupada's own experiences in ISKCON, and then how Prabhupada himself actually demonstrated. Acharya means one who leads by example. He followed what he preached, and what he preached, that's exactly, it's a person Bhagavata. All these Bhagavatam experiences we can see in person as a Srila Prabhupada, in the person Bhagavata, book Bhagavata. So these were some of the points, and then if anybody has any comments or questions, we can go on for 5 minutes more. Yeah, somebody has got question. Yes, see, because his question is now whether chanting in the 46th verse, it says, they all had performed all the principles of religion and as a result rightly decided that the lotus feet of the Lord Sri Krishna are the supreme goal of all. Therefore they meditated upon his feet without interruptions. Now his question is whether because of pious life, because of some good karma, we get a particular body, and which helps in chanting Hare Krishna more, or without any credit, previous credit, directly if you take up Krishna consciousness also, whether we can progress, we get the same result. Is that what question? Something similar. Yes, definitely, because that is why it is said that it's in this material world, it's a give and take, it's a best use of the bad bargain. We know that we have got a bad bargain, this material body. How best, what benefit we can extract out of this body? So now somebody, suppose a gross example is, suppose somebody is staying in a rented house. His next plan would be, I should elevate myself to move on to a permanent house. So with basic necessity, I don't care about big facilities, I just want to move on to permanent residence. Now somebody after going there is not satisfied. Now I want a bigger house, I want a bigger vehicle, bigger facilities. So always the living entity is trying to elevate his bodily comforts, but that actually tendency is there to elevate the consciousness as a whole. What is I'm doing for my elevation of my soul? So definitely pious credit, somebody is born with Janma Ishwarya Shruta Shribir Edamana Madapuman. Kunti Marani also says, if somebody is a non-devotee, this good birth, Aishwarya, beauty, knowledge, etc., this becomes a disqualification. It's like having big zeros. Materially, Saturday we saw that beautiful song by Bhaktivedanta Thakur. Mayar Vaibhav, that is that, Jadavidya Mayar Vaibhav. The more qualifications materially one person has got, that becomes a disqualification in a sense for progressing in spiritual life. But on the other hand, if somebody is completely poverty stricken, that is why 4 categories: Artho, Artharthi, Jijnasu, Jnani. So somebody who is in difficulty, somebody who is in need of money, somebody is inquiring. Among that, Jnani is the best. These are the 4 categories of pious people who surrender to Krishna. So it is not a generic statement that all pious people will take up Krishna consciousness. But definitely there are instances, because somebody who's followed in this previous life and due to some reason he has fallen down, he couldn't continue, make it perfection. So he continues from where he had left off. That's what exact Krishna says to Arjuna. Arjuna asks, what if somebody is following this path, half the way he leaves and goes, he is neither here not here. So he said, whatever he has done, it's for his eternal credit. And he continues in the next life, he will be given a chance. So he will be born as a someone in the rich aristocratic family, Brahminical family with nice culture, and then he actually continues. But the potency of Hare Krishna mantra is so much that even without any such pre-qualification, which Prabhupada demonstrated, he went to all over the world, Mlechas, Yavanas, everybody, the hippies, he just by chanting and hearing and following the principles given by Prabhupada as much as possible, the consciousness is elevated in a fast track so much. In the normal course of Vedic instruction, suppose 100 lifetimes you be a Shudra, then next you will be elevated as a Vaishya, 100 lifetimes as a Vaishya you will become Kshatriya, then as 100 lifetimes in Kshatriya you will be elevated as a Brahmana, then you may have the chance of getting liberation. So these hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes, what benefit we get we just get in one life if we follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. So it's a very fast track process. But definitely sometimes some things may be useful, but it is not all in all. It's not that without any pious credit, one cannot elevate. One cannot have good consciousness. That's a wrong thing. The Hare Krishna mantra is so potent that it doesn't require any pre-qualification. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, yeah.
What is Atmodhar?
Atmodhara.
Atmodhar, is it essential to have this Atmodhar, to have a liberation?
Yeah, so Atmodhara means the literal meaning is you are doing Uddhara of the Atma. That is actually self-realization. You are doing good to the real self known as Atma. Now, many people now today we are identifying myself to be this body. If you ask a person, who are you? He immediately gives bodily designation. My name is so and so. I am born here. My parents are so and so. So it's all connected to this bodily designation. But actually we are not this body. So I say this, my hand. I don't call I hand, my head. I call it as my head. So that means me means Dehi. Dehi means Deha. This is Deha. And the person who is dwelling within this body is Dehi. That is what exactly Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita. Dehino asmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tata dehantara prapti dhirastatra namugyati. So we are seeing there, the soul changing bodies. So the body is changing, but the soul, the spirit as part and parcel of Krishna, that is the same. So now we should do good for the soul means we should get out of this material body, imprisonment, and soul should go to its original constitutional position, that is spiritual body. Which like great sages like Srila Prabhupada, Nitya, so they have, why we worship his body? Because his body is no more a material body, it is spiritual body. So the same benefit what you get when the person was physically present, same thing can be obtained even when he is not physically alive, just by invoking his blessings in the particular form of his. So that means Atma Sharira. Just like there is no difference between Krishna and Krishna's soul. When we get our spiritual bodies, so in that sense qualitatively we will also not have difference. But now there is a difference between this body and the soul. So Atmodhara means essentially we do activities that elevates soul. So that is Atmodhara, the spiritual activities, that is. Hare Krishna. Yes, one more question.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, I have two questions, Prabhu. First one is that does one have to become a pure devotee in order to be successful in this life? Because we are seeing that you mentioned about a Mataji who just chanted Hare, who is Krishna at the end, and then she also had gotten elevated. And is it compulsory that one has to become a pure devotee? What is the process? What is the success of this life? And second part is, if it is not compulsory, then how does one become a pure devotee?
Yeah, so the question, because it is true that unless one becomes a pure devotee, one cannot go back to Godhead. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, even if there is a tinge of material desire, the soul will be shackled, imprisoned in this material world. That is the free will of the jiva. The Krishna doesn't want to, interfere with jiva's free will. So, but if the soul has no desire other than the desire of the Supreme Lord and the spiritual master, then that means the soul is pure devotee already. So external, just like for example, Prabhupada gives example of this fan. The fan may be rotating. The moment you switch off the fan, the turn of the switch, doesn't mean that immediately the fan will stop. So the fan will continue to rotate for some more time, but the speed is reducing. So similarly, the path of progress, the path of perfection is such that when we take a process as given by Srila Prabhupada, in a sense we are all pure devotees. But unless we reach 100%, the stage of pure devotion, we cannot go back to Godhead. So now going back to Godhead is not an easy thing. It's very, very difficult task. Now coming to your second question, how to become pure devotee is there are different ways. Either you, by your own endeavor, you can become a pure devotee. So that is one way. And another way is, Prabhupada gives that example, Kripa Siddha. Just like there is one beggar. Now he is a beggar today, but if some Bill Gates comes, some millionaire comes, he agrees to give him immediately 1 crore of rupees. So next moment he is crorepati, isn't it? Either he has to earn it by his hard work, which is anyway not possible throughout his whole lifetime if he works also. But if somebody has that mercy, that money, if he gives to him, he becomes immediately also become elevated. So similarly, Prabhupada, we know that he has got so much of faith, devotion to Krishna. Even today I may not have. But if we please Prabhupada, if we listen to Prabhupada's instructions, if we serve Prabhupada, if we serve Prabhupada's desires, Prabhupada's movement, mission, and Prabhupada gives us, because he has got unlimited Krishna Bhakti. Out of that little, if he gives to us, then we will also immediately, next minute, we can become pure devotee. So that is the potency of a pure devotee. That is why it is said, Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado, yasya aprasadat nagati gotopi. Only with the mercy of a pure devotee, one can go back to Godhead. Otherwise, no jnani, no karmi, no amount of tapasya, no austerity, sadhana, nobody can go back to Godhead. We are just showing our sincerity to follow his instructions, thereby he will be pleased. So that is the process.
Harish Guru.
The last question. Yeah.
Harish Guru.
Yeah, Harish.
You said that how life after life, that our father is changing, our parents are changing. This life, new father, next life, previous life, another father. So this I was thinking actually few months before, I think. My father, when I was in 10th standard, my father died. So I thought that same feeling, that that time my question started. So I was thinking that where is he now? Like that time thinking that what Krishna has done with my life, what he has taken my father, all these things. So I keep on question asking, then how I came to Krishna consciousness. Then after some years I thought that I actually thanks my father, that if this is my like thought process, if you didn't die, I will not get this Krishna conscious.
Yes.
And my thinking was that if I will not get this Krishna conscious, then I was full life, I was being illusion. Like, so if I share this, like after this thought process to anyone, like some people will not appreciate. What is your view on that? So
no, right, because when I say that, every body we get different father, different parents, it's not that when we have a particular father in this life, we disrespect them. No, we don't disrespect. Even a devotee doesn't even disrespect ant. So due respect is there. Due respect has to be given to every living entity. So the due respect for an ant is to allow it to survive, not to kill. And due respect, like this, different people have to be given different due respects. Now, because of our present parents, we have got this body, because of which we are able to get Krishna Bhakti. So definitely we have to be grateful to them. But why celebrate only 1 year, Father's Day, Mother's Day? You have to celebrate every day. Every moment you have to be grateful, gratitude. So that's what exactly our Shastras recommend. This celebrating for 1 day and 364 days, forgetting, disrespecting, not listening to them, harassing them. This is not what Vedic literature speak. You have to be grateful every moment. Shastra say, morning when you get up, you should pay obeisance to them. So we should be so much grateful. You should gift them something which is going to be there with them eternally. Some today you want to gift something, somebody wants to gift one garland, after a few hours, few days, that garland is rotten. Somebody wants to give something, okay, it's good, okay, some extent. But something we should gift which is going to last eternally, life after life. That is only possible if you gift Krishna consciousness to them. So that is so much example that Kartikeya, that mother, and Dhruva Maharaj, he took personally her mother to the spiritual world. Prahlad Maharaj, because of which his father, although he was a demon, Hiranyakashipu, because of a great devotee son like Prahlad Maharaj, he actually went, not only he, 14 generations, Prabhupada says, 7 generations further and 7 generations below. And he had Bali Maharaj later on as his grand, like this. So this is the greatest welfare activity. And Krishna consciousness is so wide. Why only mother, why only father? Do this greatest, beneficial activity for entire humanity. Not only humanity, for everybody, even the other trees, living entities, animals. So that is why 4 regulative principles, no meat eating, no killing, if you do, and prasadam distribution, Akshay Patra, whatever Prabhupada's instructions are that it is doing good for entire humanity, not only own parents. So the Krishna consciousness, the ambit is so wide, unlimited. So that is why if one person like Prabhupada, for example, has become a pure devotee, he is a pure devotee, he can change the face of the world So Prabhupada is appealing to us, even 1% of this human population takes to this Krishna consciousness, the face of the world will change. Which actually Prabhupada demonstrated. Prabhupada is just one person. Because of his capacity, because of his potency, he has actually changed the face of the world.
Oh,
Yeah. We will take it offline, we will end the class here. We will discuss personally. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki.